Welcome everybody to the Somewhat Podcast Men. Today we're going to be talking about Ukraine and Russia. My name's Alex. I got the gloves on.
Where did you get them? Walmart?
They're for you especially.
Oh, okay.
And this is Riz K. This is going to be a fun one.
Riz kind of hesitated there, answering real fast.
He's not sure who he is.
Exactly, yeah.
You didn't introduce yourself
I
yet.
guess he was still concentrating on the boxing gloves.
I know that those gloves threw me off. I thought Alex was ready to get in the ring with Mike Tyson or Muhammad Ali, the Rumble in the Jungle, the Thriller in Manila. You know.
I'm not that kind of fighter.
So, Russia and Ukraine.
I'll give you a verbal blow you will never recover from.
No.
All right.
All right, Saint.
All right, man. Today we're gonna be talking about the Russian invasion of Ukraine. So, Rizke, what do you think?
Wow. I mean, there's so much to say, but I'm sure everyone's been following it on the news. It's dominating the news cycle for the last several months. But basically, in a nutshell, Russia, led by Vladimir Putin, basically invaded Ukraine about 2 months ago on the pretext that it was for their national security. I think that's the claim that they were using, and I guess it's not been a quick win like they maybe they had thought it would be. The war is dragging on. It over 2 months now, and it seems like there's no clear. And I think you brought up some statistics about the death toll and all. I think let's share that with the listeners as well.
So, the propaganda death toll and the statistics right off Reuters, I'm just,
Why are you calling it propaganda? Like what? Like a death toll is a death toll. Like what?
Well, it doesn't say, like, if it's the populace, the army, it just gives a death toll. 41,400 missing and 12,000 injured, non-fatal injuries,
Mm-hmm.
and 14 million displaced.
Wow,
14 million.
that's a lot.
Hey, I think the Europeans are really happy to have refugee Europeans,
Well, they're happy this time
Don't
to invite the
don't they all look
last
like
time,
them?
last time they weren't so happy.
Yeah, last time they didn't look like them, that's why.
Well, Syrians, if any Middle Eastern group is gonna look semi-European, it'll be the Syrians.
So Alex, what's let's get into it. What's the reason you think? I guess, and this might be tough to really pinpoint, but what's the reason you think that Russia invaded Ukraine at this particular time?
I mean, like historically, let's go to the past for a little bit. Historically, the Ukrainians and the Russians have been a very interconnected people. From the time of the Russian principalities. I mean, it was even called Kievan Rus, right?
Mm-hmm.
The area was called Kievan Rus. And I don't know 100%. You guys can correct me, or maybe one of our listeners know better than I do, but I even think that either the Vikings came from the Kievan Rus or the Kievan Rus came from the Vikings. Like they're the same people. And the Ukrainians and Russians share similar culture, similar history, similar languages, and they follow the same religion. They're Orthodox Christians. So there's a lot of interconnected ties between the two groups, and they've always been like that. So from the Russian principalities to and through the Mongolian invasions, through the Tsar, through the Soviet Union, and even now today, Ukraine typically has been part of the Russian sphere of influence, so to speak. So this is Putin's kind of desire or goal to kind of integrate that part of the world again into the Russian sphere of influence, since it's been waning for quite some time.
Well, they didn't have any. It's pretty interesting that Chechnya, the Chechens, Putin was pretty. He made a nice deal with them to under the Republic of Russia, they can have their own sovereignty, and all that fighting Chechnya had with the Soviet Union back in the days, just stopped automatically. I mean, they're they
Yeah.
actually have no issue living under the Russian banner.
Mm.
It's
So
something.
what deal like what led to their what deal you said that
Well,
the Chechens made?
he gave them a seat at the table.
Oh, I see.
Basically, Russia will not interfere with any Chechen, inter-country laws. They
I see.
can rule the
Well,
country as they want, but they'll be part
Mhm.
of the federation.
so I mean,
I
this
got
is this is going back to kind of like the setup that they had when they had the Russian principalities, where
you. I see.
they had different princes
Hmm.
I
that were
see.
responsible for different areas and had their own sphere of influence that answered to a king or the one like czar, so to speak. But
I gotcha.
this was before the czar times. Probably into more of the Mongolian conquest and before that. That's how they used to operate. So it sounds, and I don't really know, but it sounds like they're kind of going back to that. Um,
Right,
that
but Saint, what's the reason you think they decided to invade Ukraine? Was there an imminent threat that they were
Well,
fearing, or what was the impetus?
here's the
Like
thing with
like why now?
after the Soviet Union fell,
Hmm.
Putin made some pretty radical calls. Well, I say radical because they were just nobody expected that to happen. He
Hmm.
realized one thing, that fighting the Muslims ain't gonna get him any stability in that region. All right.
Okay.
And what the Chechens wanted was their own sovereignty. So he's like, listen, you get the backing of the Russian Federation. You rule your land. We don't have any issues. But, you have a seat at the table and you get what we have by being with us. So basically, actually, the fight against
that's not correct.
ISIS, the fight
That's not
against
correct.
ISIS, well,
That's not. Hold on, Saint. Hold on.
you could give it as my opinion from what
Okay,
I know.
but hold on. Just like a clarification. So the the Chechens. I don't know why we're talking about them now, but the
Yeah.
Chechens.
It
the
actually goes
Chechens.
so you look at
Hold
all
on.
that split apart from the Soviets first,
Right.
all the
Okay.
Ukraine was
The
part of that.
right, but the Chechens never split from the
They did
Soviets. They
not.
were
They
still
did
part.
not. That's
So
right.
they declared independence, and Boris Yeltsin was the president at that time.
Hmm.
Um, and the West started to give support to the Chechens. Boris Yeltsin was removed from office, or he left office. I don't know. And Putin took over. And when Putin took over, he took a very draconian approach to the Chechens.
Yeah.
He was fighting them and like sending in the army full bore. So it was a little different. But one thing I do want to talk about real quick is cricket.
Okay.
So what about
I'm
cricket?
just kidding.
Okay, I knew
I'm
it.
just messing with you. I had to bring it up because last podcast I was talking crap about cricket. You guys got, I felt like the icy cold stares coming through the friggin'.
Don't mess with cricket, son. Don't mess with cricket.
I
Cricket
won't.
is life.
Never. Not tonight. Never
All
again.
right.
You guys are gonna
All right.
visit
So
me
go
with
ahead,
that.
Alex.
Yeah. So I mean, Putin was very harsh with the Chechen rebels,
Mm.
and then I, so it he put the current leader of Chechnya in power,
Yeah.
and then it became like a client relationship,
Yeah.
and to Saint's point, to do a full circle, that's what he wants to do with Ukraine,
Mm.
because Ukraine has veered from the Russian sphere of influence more towards the West, and I'm sure Saint has a
Mm.
bunch of conspiracy theories about that, but go ahead, buddy.
No, we'll stick with Ukraine for now. We'll do another one on this
Yeah.
topic because it's got a lot of juice to it. From what I started reading and why Putin went with that to make peace with them and actually started utilizing them as a pretty
Mm,
war asset because a lot of the dirty fighting the Chechens do for him.
Right.
They're like
so,
his
so, uh,
homeboys.
mm. So
But yeah,
basically, I guess, yeah, I think basically, when you think about the reasons as to why Russia would have invaded Ukraine, I mean, I guess you can sit on two sides of the fence. Like, I guess one side is going to say that, well, Russia was afraid of like the increasing encroachment of the NATO
I think
closer to its
that is
to
one of the
territories.
more solid
Yeah, yeah,
reasons,
and
which has some
Russia,
weight.
yeah, right, right. So I mean, one side is gonna say that well, Russia was justified because they were. It was a national security issue for them. They felt that they were in imminent danger. I guess that's one side, right? The other side could be that the Ukrainian people, I mean, the way that they have fought against the Russians, I mean, it seems to me that like there is certain portions of Ukraine which are more Russian friendly, like the Donbas regions, right? They're definitely more inclined towards Russia. But the way that the Ukrainian people have resisted this invasion so far tells me that there is a large percentage of people in Ukraine who have a distinct identity as Ukrainians, as apart from Russians, right? And they see this as a foreign invasion, right? They see this as a legitimate foreign invasion. And that's why they're fighting like hell. And I guess the people in the West would say that basically Putin is a megalomaniac, and he's just trying to expand this notion of the great Russian state that he has in his head.
Just like the United
So
States expanded its
right,
claws into Iraq,
right,
and so
right.
yeah, it's Western propaganda at best.
I mean,
But
like,
but
like
let's yeah,
we
yeah,
have to understand something, right?
yeah,
Like the United States and NATO are in a proxy war with Russia, right?
right,
It is a proxy war, period.
yeah,
So the news that you get from the US or from Europe, there is going to be propaganda in it. I mean, it's going to be propaganda because it's part of the war effort. You know what I mean? Like this is not a United States and NATO aren't sitting by and just watching. They're actively supporting and helping the Ukrainians. And the one danger that we can do in having this conversation is turn it into this side versus this side, because that's isn't what's happening. In any kind of conflict or in any kind of diplomacy or foreign policy in the world, it's different groups of people angling for an objective. And it doesn't
right,
mean one versus the other. It could mean six versus six, five versus five, five versus all, one versus all. There's no one side versus another side. Everybody on in this conflict has an objective and has a goal, and they're all playing against each other.
right,
So we have to remember that
yeah,
when we're discussing this. Another thing we need to be careful of, or our viewers should be cautious of, is what we do is we do some reading, we do some studying, we
hmm,
take a little bit of what we know about history and foreign politics, and we give an opinion. Whether or
right,
not that opinion is right, it,
hmm,
I'm not saying my opinion is right. I'm just giving you what I think, and it
So,
could be wrong, it could be right. I don't know.
so
yeah,
to the viewers, I would say this: I'm an immigrant from Pakistan living in the United States, a citizen now, and we have seen the outside the United States. We have been living in those countries. We know what's going on, so our opinion is kind of muffled into a window from the outside. What we see is, at the end of the day, it's the people who pay the price of these wars. All right, the economic
yeah,
disaster the countries feel from these skirmishes, it goes on for decades, if not centuries, to recover from. Then the displacements of people. The whole thing is, people need to start to think of this whole planet as one country. We are living in, nobody can escape it. I don't know when Elon Musk is going to send us to Mars. I don't see it happening that quick. And even if Mars, I mean, how are we going to inhabit it? But that being said, we have to be very, very cautious in taking slides. All right.
Well,
I
I don't think we're taking sides. I think we're just commentating.
Yeah, we're
Right.
commentating. Yeah.
Yeah,
No.
and
This
then
is for
we're
the
not taking
people.
sides. We're commentating.
Even the citizens of this country, of the United States. You have to look at it. Are these wars going to benefit anybody? I mean, the territorial wars. Ukraine is never going to be part of the United States in anywhere from. Yes, Russia's invading. I have seen less diplomacy and more sanctions.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Right.
where's the talks?
So one thing, Rizke, I want to talk about.
Yeah.
Really important is and Saint is guys. Time out, guys. We need to take a pause here for something. So
All right.
so like we're not discussing what is Russia's objective here. Like
Right.
there's no problem when a country has an objective or has a goal that they want to accomplish and achieve. So what's Russia's objective? Whether it's wrong or right doesn't matter. So what's their objective here?
Right. Well,
Are they going to take Ukraine back? Make it part of the Russian Federation?
Okay.
I think you raise an interesting question, and I think I want to take take a step back and let's take a larger eye or bird's eye view. Like let's try that for a second, right? I don't know if you guys or any of the listeners have heard of the name Alexander Dugin, but if not, you definitely want to Google him and read up about him, because to understand what's going on in Russia and what might be motivating Putin's worldview, one needs to read and understand Mr. Dugin. This guy is like a very prominent philosopher, historian, sociologist, and some people call him Putin's brain. You know, meaning that he has apparently like a great amount of influence over there. But basically, what this guy is saying is, in terms of political philosophies, he is against what he terms liberalism, which he says is the predominant ideology of the West, personified by the United States and its allies. And what he means by that is that he feels that liberalism, although it defeated fascism and communism, right? But he feels that it has led to the moral decay of its sort of population, right?
Well,
Where
he's
people
not.
have,
He's not the like.
yeah,
This is. There are groups in the United States that feel
yeah,
the same exact way. You have an entire political party
right.
that
But
would say,
let me finish so you can understand a little bit more. But so that's one thing, right? So one thing is he said he feels that the liberalism that's espoused by the West is corrupt, and that Russia needs to be an antidote, or like opposed to it, right? Is to spread across the global stage. He also talks about have you of the Eurasia. Have you heard of the Eurasia project? Eurasia.
no.
Basically, and when he talks about Eurasia, it's basically like the former Soviet Union in a sense, and some more territories. But he says that the Eurasian civilization is one that is grounded in a more traditional, religious, spiritual framework, where morals and a collective identity are more central to the nation as opposed to the West. In the West, everybody talks about individualism, right?
Yeah.
Like and he basically thinks that the individualism in the West has gotten too far. For example, like if you think about the woke culture that you have in the United States, right? And also like the pronouns, like this gender neutral stuff that's going on. Those are some examples that he would give of the extremism that liberalism will take you to, right? So if you look at it from that standpoint, this Russia-Ukraine conflict going on is a clash of these two competing ideologies, I would
Like
say.
Yes, there's a flavor to that in that whole conflict. I will
Yeah, so
agree. Yep.
he's against like this hyper individualistic, hyper identity politics that's
Yeah.
become.
By the way, Putin's wife's Muslim, current wife.
Is she really?
Yeah. Imran Khan
Is this
said so.
That's what
verified?
they say. That's what the
Hey,
propaganda says.
Imran Khan said it. I believe Imran Khan, man.
Who knows
Imran Khan
what's
said it.
truth and
Yeah.
not truth? So, but
Not.
like one thing I will say is that the United States currently is struggling with the same thing. And this is
Uh-huh.
not um it's not unique to Russian thought, right? So like
Yeah.
there are groups and there are philosophers
Yeah.
and psychologists and public figures who feel in the United States who are U.S. citizens or North American citizens that feel the exact same way that
But
hyper individualism leads to moral decay, and moral
yeah.
decay will lead to decay of the country. So
But I'm going to put one difference though. Yes, we have a lot of philosophers who talk, but Alexander Dugin is unique in that he also has the Russian state working with him. Now, how
Yeah.
many philosophers do you know in the United States
Yeah.
have like the state apparatus with them?
Yeah, that's true. That is.
Do you
function
see what I'm saying though?
we
But
function
but
in a
the
very different
but the
way.
structure of the United
I'm
States, you
sorry.
got to look at it this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Being a very secular country, although they try to be as Christian as possible, when the Republicans they sell the banter for religion
Mhm.
to get votes. But United States is actually one of the most secular countries, and with that being said, yeah, it's one of the most unique countries where you don't see the state having any official spokespeople, clergy or any philosophers, poets, or anything like that. People
But
do, they do. It's more individualistic approach to all of those areas.
we are secular in practice
Right.
and religious in our individual lives,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
so where in Russia, I mean, I don't even know, but there are, let's
Russia.
say there are other countries who have state religion and state sponsored, spokespeople for religion. Like the
A lot
U.S.
of
is
the Muslim
very very
countries do.
unique,
A lot of the Muslim countries
right?
do.
Right.
Yeah,
So
I mean this. Yeah, yeah,
Russia's kind of like, well, you. It's very traditional, honestly.
yeah.
Yes.
Russia is a more traditional. Yeah, I think it comes from their Eastern Orthodox Christian roots.
Hmm.
Right.
Because
So Risky, you were saying that
Yeah.
Putin has the ear of this philosopher.
Well, yeah, like the this philosopher is apparently very influential within Russian circles,
I will
and
put the link down to that
yeah,
video you sent me in the podcast on YouTube, so the listeners, if they're
okay.
interested, they can check it out in the
And yeah,
description.
and this guy has written like over 40 different books. I mean, his books are basically what's taught in Russian educational institutions. So what I'm saying is that like this guy, he is developing the sort of the worldview,
The moral code.
yeah, of that country
Yeah.
going forwards.
And
That's
part
what
of that
yeah.
worldview is to extend the Russian influence beyond
What
a certain
what?
border.
No. Part of that worldview is to counter the expansion of the Western
Right.
hegemony, basically. And what they would say is that that Ukraine becoming member of NATO, or Ukraine allowing air bases within that is an encroachment of the West, right? And that the Russian needs to counter that because they feel left unchecked that this Western liberalism is trying for global domination,
So
essentially.
Saint, what do you know about
Yeah,
what do you know about that? Is this what have you read up on NATO and Ukraine and the
yeah.
bases and stuff like that?
Didn't have to read anything. I look at it just like the Roman Empire, the expansion of Roman Empire. They
Hmm.
put their legions in different places where they conquered them just to keep as watchtowers. Same thing happened in Pakistan. The government, Imran Khan's government, got voted down because he didn't want the United States to put bases in Pakistan. And since he had
So
since he had anti-American, he was, according to the Americans, he was making anti-American policies. They had him removed, and
Right.
and so
In our case, since we're so liberal and we have such identity-driven politics, instead of legions, we're putting in vegans.
What? Vegans.
I'm here all night, folks.
Vegans.
So like, okay, let's do a geography lesson real quick, right?
Yeah.
Um, Ukraine and Russia are part of the Eurasian Plain. Western Russia and Ukraine are part of the Eurasian Plain. The
Yeah.
Eurasian Plain is a wide expanse of flat land where a lot of
Yeah.
crops are grown, right? So think of it like the Midwest, okay? There are no natural barriers between Ukraine and Russia in a large part of their border. It's just an open land, it's open expanses. So Russia's motive here is that NATO wants Ukraine to be part of NATO or to have some sort of agreement with them where they can put bases and have weapons there.
I think
and
it's
start
more of the basis. It's more of the basis thing, and becoming part of the NATO was secondary to that. But the more
Right.
initiative was that the United States would have like military bases there.
And selling Western weapons and Western technology. If that happened, Russian military expenditures would have to increase substantially.
Yeah.
5, 10, 15, 20, 100 times its current rate, and it's not sustainable, you know?
Right.
So
Right.
if you have I don't want to call NATO a hostile, maybe now they're a hostile organization, but to Russia. But back then, when you had NATO at your border with Western weapons and foreign troops at your border, Russia's going to have to respond by putting troops and military equipment at that same location, you know, and they can't afford it. So
let me ask you
their
both
lives
a simple question. We just put it in very simplistic perspective. Let's say you didn't like somebody, right? To the point where they were pretty hostile to you, and that person moves right in your neighborhood, more particularly right opposite to your apartment or the house right in front of your house, and he did that deliberately. How would you feel?
You can't make like global. You can't narrow down a global conflict into like those kind of simplistic terms, because if you ask the American government or the Russian government, like, oh, do you guys have problems with each other? Like, no, we don't have no problems, right? It's their objectives, right? The U.S. has an objective to reduce Russian influence in that part of the world. The Russians have an objective to increase their influence in that part of the world.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean that they don't like each other. Liking somebody has nothing to do with it. It's more of, I have an objective, you have an objective. All these 5,000 people around us have different objectives.
So exactly what I said was the person who's hostile to you buying the house, he has an objective against you then.
It's a clash of
but okay, we can actually parallel this to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Just imagine if Russia didn't back down from putting those missiles over there, what would have happened?
Yeah.
Right.
So this is against the same thing, although I think Russia's actually taken a much passive stance. They are looking at it as a foreign invasion, because Ukraine is getting supplied by weapons. If not troops, but they're getting military support by weapons, by money. 40 billion US tax dollars going there. Nobody gives a damn about that over here.
Wait a second, though. Is Russia and Ukraine a fair fight?
It's not one-on-one. I'm not going to even comment on that one. I mean, you look at Russia and Ukraine. But yes, I'm not going to comment on if it's a fair fight. We're sticking to why Russia's invading Ukraine.
Right.
Why they're invading doesn't have to mean that that's a right reason or a justified reason.
Yes, we're talking about the reasons that have led to this.
Right. But people are gonna counter. People can counter that. Well, that might be Russian propaganda as well, right?
Well, that's fine, because these countries have nuclear weapons. Are we ready for that crap?
Nuclear weapons?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
I mean, we're
You know,
all making assumptions
everything
here.
we have right now, it'll only take a couple of nukes to set us back in the Stone Age. No more
Well, okay, so
internet,
check this
no
out.
more podcasts. Forget vaping. No more
So
backgrounds.
this article that I read
Yeah.
is proof that the military establishment in all countries are starting to second guess the use of nuclear weapons, right? I'll tell you why. World War II and directly after World War II, we had an example of what a nuclear weapon could do, and then nuclear tests and stuff like that. So the military wings of governments were very hesitant to use it.
Thank God.
Now I read an article saying that, well, the use of nuclear weapons might not be as bad as we thought it would have been.
Oh, really?
Yeah, they got
So,
neutron
me,
bombs
that
now.
sounds like somebody's prompting, like, oh, well, right?
They have
So who
neutron
knows?
bombs now, which are not. What they do is they just destroy organic matter. They leave the structures intact. So everything that
But let me,
dies would be organic.
right. But let me ask you guys this: obviously, when you look at it superficially, Russia has a much larger, stronger, powerful military, right, compared to Ukraine, and it's been over 2 months, and yet it doesn't seem that Russia is achieving a clear victory. What do you think is going on
But
as
but
regards to
I
that?
don't think Russia is actually trying to put their flag right in the center of Ukraine and say, hey, SARS. It's
Mhm.
not doing that. You got to look at it this way. Putin is not as stupid as people think he is. You
Yeah,
know,
they have to rule.
he's playing the West too, because the West is putting money in there too. They're
Right,
using
right.
money. They're using resources. He's gonna use Ukraine to tire them out too.
Mm.
He's learned that from the
Well, I mean,
Afghan War.
well, hold on. You have the United States and all of Europe supplying weapons to the Ukrainians.
I think
So
Europe
Right.
is not
versus
that
Russia,
happy in spending
who's
money
doing
into
that by
this.
themselves.
I'm sorry.
If you,
Versus Russia,
Alex.
who's doing that by themselves.
Uh-huh. I
yeah,
think it's also because they're not allowed to use the airspace to drop bombs from overhead. That's probably been a big factor too.
Well, they're allowed to use it; they just can't.
They can't, right? Yeah. I think the neutralizing Russian air, dominance has been crucial. Like
what
as far as that
is
goes.
going to be very interesting is
Mm.
China has been a big supporter
Yeah.
with Russia in this whole thing. Yeah. Yet, support, and I'll tell you why. They're supporting Russia, but just like everybody else on the forum,
Yeah.
on the internet forum, they're like, we will be the ones who can provide peace talks. Yeah,
Yeah,
bullshit.
Alex is gonna.
We'll
Alex is
put
gonna
the
counter.
look,
table and the spread, and we can sit here and talk about it.
listen. If you have, this is to what I brought earlier, right? China is not supporting Russia. China's supporting China. So
Right.
Yes.
whatever works best for China, that's what
Mm.
they're gonna do.
Well,
So
China
Yeah.
also knows.
if it works best for China to like push back on Russia, saying, yo, you guys are really aggressive, we don't really know what you guys are doing, et cetera, that's what they're gonna do. If it benefits China to like send weapons or sell weapons to Russia,
So.
they're gonna do. So
Yeah.
it's not like Russia and China they're conflicting nations, right? Russia cannot be seen as the weaker partner in this group. Why? Because there are hundreds of thousands of Chinese nationals that live in southeastern Russia, and if Russia shows that they're weak to China or that they're reliant on China, it's only a matter of time before China calls and say, hey. We really think this area belongs to us. There's a lot of Chinese nationals there, and they'd be better off if they lived under
See,
us.
thing about the
Mm.
Chinese is, you got to know their internal history. Chinese never expanded their boundaries. Never.
Yeah.
They even with the way they've expanded themselves is with economic growth. They are the
True.
biggest giant. Hell, the
Yeah.
United States owes money to China. If China
Right.
stopped buying their treasury bonds, where would the dollar go? keep buying bad
Yeah.
debt. Yeah, but
Right.
you don't see China selling any weapons to Ukraine.
Well, yeah, because they can't afford to be in conflict with their neighbor. You know what I mean?
So
And
hence they are passively supporting Russia.
well,
But what about the Ukrainian people? What do you think the majority of Ukrainian people think, though?
well, before we get into that, I want to highlight
Yeah.
something, right?
Yeah.
Very, very quickly, historically.
Are we doing
Yeah.
this?
Oh.
Nope.
No, no. So very, very, very quickly, historically, right? So the the Chinese nation today, or in modern history, is a unified nation. But that wasn't always the case, right?
True.
They had different ethnicities in
Yeah.
China that had their own kingdoms.
Yeah.
And what happened was is that there was a period of warring states where all these nations were fighting each other and killing each other
Yeah.
and taking over state by state. And ethnically, a group called the Han Chinese
Mm-hmm.
would take over an area, culturally indoctrinate those people, culturally assimilate those people forcefully or non-forcefully, and then that neighboring territory would be Han Chinese. Then they would go to the next neighboring territory, do the same thing over and over again until that entire region became Han Chinese China, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like it wasn't like they weren't expansionists. They were expansionists. They were expansionists within the realm of that that time period in that area.
They've had more internal conflicts
Right,
Yeah.
than they had to deal with anything outside. But during World War II, the
right, right,
Japanese actually were another catalyst in unifying the Chinese as a whole.
right.
You know
But
that.
getting back to Ukraine.
Yeah.
The Ukrainian people, Saint. What do you think?
Yes. Well, I
The
think that
poor people are paying the price for this thing. I
yeah,
mean, what are the people going to do? They can't control
it's very
Zelensky. Zelensky's got his objective. He's a damn puppet.
yeah. What do you mean?
He's a
He's
freaking
a puppet of.
puppet. I'm not saying this. This is I'll link the video to one of the retired United States Navy chiefs. He said it on Fox News. He said Zelensky is a puppet.
Yeah. Okay. Well, let me kind of shift gears. Let's in terms of the Ukrainian people. Obviously, we all agree that I mean this is just very tragic, and you know the common person is the one who pays for the misfollies of the the political elite and whatnot. That's always been the case. Now, my point is that if the majority of the Ukrainian people had more pro-Russian sentiments, that Russia would have won this, would have ran over Ukraine much more quickly.
You've got
Yeah,
the
but that's
same
not
issue.
what's
You've got the
happening.
same issue with Ukraine. You've got conservatives and then you
Mhm.
got liberals.
Yeah, but I mean, like it's on a different level. Like
Yeah,
you don't see.
it's a different level, definitely. More of the northern Ukraine supports, having Russia.
The Donbas region,
Yes.
the West. But my point is that like I mean, I think there was maybe there were some people within the Russian think tanks or establishment that thought that the Ukrainian people might welcome them coming into and overthrowing a puppet, like so-called puppet government, right? The Zelensky government.
Puppet.
But I mean, but if you look at what's going on, though, the resistance and the fight that the Ukrainian people are putting up, it speaks to like this internal sense of identity that they have, as being uniquely Ukrainian. That's what I'm pointing towards. I'm pointing more towards a different
I I,
psychological factor.
I feel the United States should
Mm-hmm.
use its influence to, if they really want to
Mm-hmm.
pacify this with all
Yeah.
good intentions. They can bring Russia to talks. I mean, they were the ones who promised Russia that they're not going to have any more NATO members, and now we got Finland and Sweden wanting to be NATO
Yeah, but
members.
that's a direct response to the
Right.
Russian invasion. That didn't come out of like thin air.
Right.
The
This,
Russian
uh,
invasion is partly in also the response for this false promise.
so let's discuss this like in the viewpoint of countries that are surrounding this conflict, right? So
Yeah.
you have Finland and
Yeah.
Sweden, right? Who traditionally have been neutral parties in the Russian, U.S., Soviet, U.S. conflict, right? They've been neutral parties. They haven't interfered this way or that way, but specifically because of the Russian invasion of Ukraine, Finland and Sweden now want to join NATO. And this is a direct reaction to Russia's invasion. It's not in spite of it. It's not, they weren't, planning on this before, right?
Okay.
So you have Sweden and Finland, and then you also have Turkey, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Turkey is a NATO member who traditionally the Turks and the Russians have been adversaries, right? One of the long-standing goals of Russia and Russian leaders have been to retake Istanbul and return it into Constantinople, right?
Yeah.
The capital of the Orthodox Church, right? This has been a long-standing goal of theirs. But funny enough, the Turks and the Russians have been working together on several different projects in order to create regional stability. So Turkey at this point has become somewhat of an arbiter between NATO and Russia.
Yeah,
And they're
it's
benefiting from this greatly. They're
Turkey is
selling weapons to
actually the
Ukraine.
only NATO ally that actually the door swings both ways. You know,
Right. They 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 they're supporting Russian diplomatic goals in trying to get them to talk with Ukraine. So they've become sort of the belle of the ball. Everybody wants Turkey on their side. They need Turkey to talk to Russia. They need Turkey to talk to Ukraine. Ukraine views and Russia views Turkey as a trusted diplomatic partner. They're selling weapons to the Ukrainians. They're assisting NATO in their support and missions. And at the same time, they get to veto whether Sweden or Finland enters NATO. So 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 whatever conflict existed between the United States and Turkey before about weapons and weapon systems, like everybody's kissing their butt now. So
no, and that's a pretty smart move on Erdogan because he actually placed Turkey in that position well
yeah,
because they were getting pressure to put sanctions and other issues towards Russia, and so he
right.
played that part real well.
So
Yeah.
how do you? Yeah. Let's move forward. And so, how do you guys like? What do you guys see as the end result of this Russian-Ukraine conflict?
Like what's gonna happen?
Yeah.
I hope to
Well,
God
you
everybody
bring out the
goes
crystal
home.
ball. Crystal ball.
What? Yes, the crystal ball. Bring it out. Bring it out.
Saint, what do you say?
Saint.
It's a tough one.
Saint, come on.
I'm trying to be not be negative here, but knowing the bullies involved in this conflict, and their big egos, is gonna be a hard one. It's gonna be a hard one. Either this thing's gonna just keep dragging on. Hope to God nuclear missiles don't fly across the damn planet. But and also depends who wins the elections in 2024. If we get crazies in power, then shit, anything's fair game.
Yeah.
So you think there's a real possibility of a nuclear Armageddon?
It depends which crazies are in power.
What do you mean? Like
Here in the United States.
I see.
Although right now, I'll be honest, the Democrats are more warmongering than the Republicans. Tucker Carlson, it's the only time I've started listening to him because he's been speaking against the war.
All right, but okay. So Alex, what do you think? How do you think it's Russia and Ukraine? How this plays out?
Yeah, so it plays out in three ways. The first way is something dramatic happens in terms of like military, like a military battle or something. Something dramatic happens. Either somebody loses really badly or somebody wins really, really.
It could also be an impulsive, like something that triggers an impulsive response.
Okay.
Something can
Okay.
go just like way out, nobody's expecting it. Something like that happens, then we don't know where the ball's gonna fly.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's always true. That's always true for sure.
Yeah, it's called like the Black Swan
Yeah.
event. Yeah, go ahead. Anyway.
My crystal ball, like gazing into
Yeah.
the crystal ball without a black swan event. If something dramatic happens, like a military defeat or a military victory, like something
Yeah.
dramatic,
Like the Yorker
so-
that you missed with your bat and hit your face.
what?
It's
It was a
a cricket thing.
cricketing thing.
A Yorker
Anyways,
is
go
a
ahead.
bowling style.
I'm not interested at all. Like you guys.
All
No,
right, go ahead.
the only interesting part about that is it misses your bat and hits your face. That's it.
I got you. So, if something like that happens to Russia,
Uh-huh.
they'll pull out, make an announcement about how cool they are and what they did and how successful they were.
Yeah.
And the U.S., the NATO, and the U.S. will make a similar announcement, and then Russia
Right.
will go back to trying to like improve relations with their neighbors and try to like mend fences, and the world will
Hey,
move on.
if Imran Khan was still in power, we would have been buying cheap gas from Russia.
And Russia will punt and kick back at that point. The second thing that could happen is Russia's just going to drag this out to what Saint said. Like Saint said, they're just going to drag it out until the next election, see who's in office,
Right.
and then try to make a deal or a decision at that
Hey,
point.
if his buddy Trump becomes president, then everything's good.
I don't think Trump was going to run for president again.
I think
he's just,
Ron DeSantis might be the next Trump.
I mean, who knows? But I don't think Trump is going to run again. I think he's just keeping his voice.
I actually agree with you on that. I don't see him.
And the last thing that could happen is, all hell breaks loose. Finland and Sweden join NATO. Russia invades Finland, and then NATO is required to.
Right.
I thought Finland and Sweden were like such peaceful places.
Bro, they're Vikings, bro. There's Viking DNA in
Oh
those people.
man, but the Muslims knocked the Viking blood out of them long time ago.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, like you guys are saying, I mean, I don't think anyone can obviously predict what's going to happen, right? Because there's so many variables and so many things can change on a day-to-day basis. I mean, I guess we all hope and pray that it.
I agree with you there.
Yeah,
I agree with you there.
Ends in a way that's causes the least amount of damage to people. Unfortunately, like you said, over 40,000 people already died.
I just want 1 year.
Displaced.
I just need 1 year without COVID, without anything. Just 1 year without anything.
It's always going to be something else.
I just need 1 year. Just give me 1 year without anything.
1 year.
Final thoughts.
Final thoughts, Saint.
1 year without anything.
Anything?
Without any craziness.
Okay,
all right.
Okay.
No viruses, no Armageddons, no wars.
Yeah.
I bet you I'm missing something.
Alex?
My final thoughts are, like I was saying earlier, there's no people are going to want to put this into a moral light, right?
Yeah.
And in situations of diplomatic, like a diplomatic push, or a foreign policy push, you really can't put this into a moral light.
There is no, it's not.
Different objectives that want to accomplish different things.
Because everybody's righteous from their own point of view.
Right. So everybody has a different goal and a different, motive. So who's right and who's wrong, that's not for us to say unless you're living through it. So if you were to ask like a Ukrainian person that lost a family member, that person has the right to say what's wrong and what's right. for them, well, I even take it. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm wrong about what I'm saying is that we can't look at it from a moral perspective because the
Yeah,
Ukrainian person that lost a family member
it's gonna look at it from a moral perspective.
is looking at it from a moral perspective and might like punch me in the face for saying something like that. So like,
Yes.
but from an outsider's perspective, like we have to be careful about assigning who's right and who's wrong, who's
We're
moral.
we're on. We are not saying who's right or wrong here, anyways.
Yeah,
We're speculating.
yeah.
We're talking about, can we get away from this somehow? Like, pacify this whole situation. Like, why aren't the world powers working towards a solution than more of supporting one side or fighting the other side?
Right, and
Everybody wants
then
something. Come to a
one thing
damn
we
agreement.
one thing we definitely should be talking about on the next podcast or some of the podcasts
Yeah.
in the future is the United States and
United
whether or
States
not
versus the world.
whether it should go back to its isolationist
No, the
standards.
United States cannot be an isolationist because the United States actually is in a position to make good changes. They can
But
literally be the leading nation, not in the wars. I mean, when the hell have we not been in a war? Seriously, one war
but
ends,
I think
another starts.
yeah. But I think what Alex is saying, that could be a topic for another podcast.
Yep.
Obviously, there's going to be a lot to discuss there.
I'm sorry, you just opened a floodgate. I was just. I thought we were starting the topic right now.
No.
I will say that though, the U.S. is not this like great world boogeyman. There are other people who have other objectives, who are doing other things that lead to their own goals, successes, and failures. Like the U.S. isn't like this great. I feel like you have the tendency to make the U.S. out to be like they're pulling the strings behind every curtain.
No,
I mean,
no.
people are
The problem is
responsible.
the U.S. has within itself people whose strings are being pulled.
Well,
So
Yeah.
that's another deep dive. That's another deep dive for later.
all right, let's.
All
Just
I'm
getting
saying is the
on the
United
pot.
States
Yeah.
as a country has great potential to be the
Absolutely.
leader of the modern world, which can put a light in a better direction than what's happening right now.
The U.S.
Absolutely.
foreign policy should be focused on the Pacific. That's my thoughts. Go
Well,
ahead.
anyways, we'll save that for that podcast. But let's ending here. I think I want to. So this is what our fifth or sixth episode we've done. We started
I've
off.
stopped
I'm sorry.
counting. I've stopped counting. I don't count no
Okay.
more.
Okay. We started off. We talked about propaganda, and obviously, propaganda is essential feature in in almost all the episodes we've done, right? Essentially.
So
Even the
where's
world,
our
even
so where's our propaganda for our sponsors?
well, that'll be at the end. But what I want to say is to the viewers is that and to you guys is that let's. I think that going forward we want to take our viewers and listeners on a journey where each topic builds upon the past, right?
I
So that
agree.
you get sort of like increasing knowledge developed and based upon that. So what I'm saying is that like if we look at this Russia Ukraine from a larger bird's eye view, right? I think what you can see is you're having like these two worldviews colliding, right? Manifesting in a proxy war. So on the one side, you have the Western worldview, which is espoused by like a focus on individualism, liberty, and all those other values, right? Against a country which is espousing more a traditional worldview, going back to the basic family structure, religion, and spiritual values as being more a collective identity being greater than the individual identity in a sense, right? So you're having like these sort of clash of I don't want to say civilizations, but worldview. So I think that we should now take our discussion onto the up to that to that level, and talk about it from there.
All right,
Peace.
fellas.
Smoke the peace
I'm sorry.
pipe. Smoke the peace pipe.
Okay, peace pipe. All right, fellas, we're going to end this podcast with a message
Yeah.
from our sponsors.
Yes.
Today's podcast was brought to you by Khalas Energy Drink.
Where's the
One
Khalas
drink
energy drink? I never
for
see it.
Halas.
They haven't sent us the bottle yet.
Do you have the graphic for them or something?
I because you drink it just one drink and Khalas.
Yeah, but
it's done.
it's a physical thing you drink out of, right?
Yeah, it's a bottle. You drink it and Khalas. It's done.
I know. Have
There's
you
no
try to
reason
save
keep
a
the
bottle so we can look at it?
All right. And also, this podcast was brought to you by Stay Fresh Lota. Stay Fresh Lota. Use the Lota. Stay fresh. All right, everybody.
All right, guys.
All
Peace
right.
out.